Welcome to another episode of Talking College Football with JJ Kitchen. Of course, I'm your host, JJ Kitchen. Guys, before we get into the topics of today, one day after another loss for Pitt, obviously losing to Virginia Tech, guys, please subscribe to the channel down below. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment. I love seeing your guys' comments on the bottom. It's always a good discussion. But more importantly, share it with your friends. And again, thank you guys for supporting the channel and the information that we're able to give you on a consistent basis. And again, thank you guys for all your support. Please subscribe down below. Guys, you're going to hear a lot of redundancy in this video from things that I've talked about before, but there's going to be some new stuff in here as well. And it's going to be a lot of just honest discussion about this coaching staff and what really needs to change as Pitt heads into the bye week after losing embarrassingly 38-21 to Virginia Tech, a Virginia Tech team coached by Brent Pry, who had previously, before this game, only had one Power 5 win in his first 2 years, obviously, here at Virginia Tech. Guys, the first thing I think I'm going to hit on immediately, and it kind of revolves around the team and what's causing this all to happen. And that's the offensive struggles. Okay, when you look at the stats, okay, and they're deceptive in certain ways. You know, you look at Phil Dracovic, who was 11 of 22 for 235 yards and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. But guys, it's still equated to a QBR of 27.3. Not good. You know, 235 yards, people might think, oh, that's really good. But when you look at this offense, okay, when I went back and, again, just writing down numerous notes and watching this game over again, there were only two real explosive plays in this game. And I think, Narduzzi touched on it in his post-game presser. Obviously, it was a 75-yard touchdown to Bub Means, something we had been waiting for within the first 5 games of the season, something we didn't find at all during the season so far. That was really the first time they connected, scored a 75-yard touchdown. You thought there was a little bit of life there. It's 7-7, what the game looks like going forward. They're back into it. What can we see? But that was just a blip on the radar. And you look at this team, and the other play, obviously, being the screen pass to Sebo Flemister when he scored a touchdown as well. Besides that, there were no explosive plays in this game for Pitt. And this is a Virginia Tech team that's given up over 200-plus rushing yards to every team it has faced this year, except for one, but they still rushed for like 179, 180 yards. Pitt in this game rushed for 38 yards. Okay, take out the Phil Dracovic, 5 carries for negative 22 yards because of the sacks. Guys, Sebo Flemister, 10 carries for 41 yards. Okay, that's 4.1 average. Okay, good, but why only 10 carries? But more importantly, the best back in this room for Pitt, Rodney Hammond, 7 carries for 18 yards, 2.6 yards per average. Guys, when Frank Cignetti was hired, we were promised that it was going to be 50-50. And that, more than likely we were going to see more run compared to the pass, and that his rushing game was a lot better than Mark Whipple. Where is that? If we cannot even run the football against a mediocre Virginia Tech defense, one, we're mediocre then, which is clearly the fact. But more importantly, if you can't even run, then what was the point of the Cignetti hire? And what really bothers me to this point is that obviously we had Izzy Abanikanda here last year. He was really, really good, obviously, not with the New York Jets. But the offensive line was better as well. And again, I've talked about this before. Matt Gonsalves is the best offensive lineman that we have this year. Obviously, he's going to the NFL. I am personally about 90% sure that he's not coming back. I think he's a day 2 or day 3 pick. To be honest with you, I think he's ready to go for the NFL. He's obviously out for the season. Jake Cradle, the starting center. We take out your center. That's a big question mark. He was out this game again. I expect him to be back. Everything I've heard is that he'll be back to the Louisville game after this bye week. But when you look at this offensive line, it has just been bad. And it's really the rushing attack that I look at and I say, man, it's been really bad. But Pat Narduzzi's talked about, when you looked at the tape, he said, when you watch this game, Phil's under duress a lot. I'm sorry. I'm going to challenge that. I don't believe that. I think there's obviously a certain number of plays he was under duress, but he's had a number of good dropbacks where there's plenty of protection. I mean, to the point where, to be honest with you, Terrence Moore missed a couple blocks here and there, but he's a guy, when Jake Cradle comes back, I just think to shore up the offensive line and give some type of production, you leave Terrence Moore in there and put Jake Cradle at right guard, because the guard position is just horrendous. Jason Collier with another mediocre game, just blatantly missing blocks. I mean, it was just ridiculous in terms of the rushing the football, but more importantly, even in the pass protection. But at times, Pitt was able to hold up. They were able to hold up and create time. And just, there was bad throw after bad throw. Phil had some good throws, that happened in this game, but the majority of them were bad. When you look at, again, when you look at the stats, when you're 11 of 22, you're 50%. I mean, that's not great. You're 11 of 22, but also, too, you were losing at some point. You look at the possessions in this game, there was no sense of urgency. The play calling again from Frank Cignetti. For the love of God, there has to be some type of identity with this football team. Because right now, through 5 games, we have no idea what the hell that is. The quarterback play has been mediocre to this point. The regression, and I looked at it, and it was great to see Phil, play a great first half against North Carolina. But in heart of hearts, it's prolonging the issue. It is prolonging the issue of what's really hurting Pitt, and that's its offensive coordinator and its play calling, which has been horrendous, but also, too, the quarterback play. When you look at, for me personally, when you look at this, you're going into a bye week. You have 2 weeks to prepare for Louisville. Under no circumstance should Phil Dracovic start this next game. You need to find out right now if Christian Veilleux can play. Because if Christian Veilleux can't play, then you're down to really 2 quarterbacks, which is Nate Yarnell and Diffenbach, okay? When you look at those 2 quarterbacks, that's great. Diffenbach is a young guy. He's going to be here regardless. There's plenty of time, but more importantly, development for that kid. Then you have Julian Duggar coming in next year. He'll be a freshman. I think he's got a lot of talent, and he can be really, really good. But he needs time to develop. He needs time to get college coaching, actually watch college games. I think it's a whole influx. There's a whole process that goes to that. But if Christian can't play, you need to find out now. Because guess what? Unfortunately, if Nate doesn't come back, where if you bring back Christian, more than likely, the way I see it right now is that, if you're going to the offseason, you're telling Nate Yarnell, hey, we'd like to come back and compete. We'd like to come back and compete with Christian, have it a 1-2 battle. Let's see who wins it. But what if he says no? He says no, and he hits the transfer portal because he's not guaranteed a spot to start, or he believes he's not going to get a fair shake. You've lost Phil Dracovic, so he's not coming back. But then you don't even know if Christian Veilleux is the answer. Christian Veilleux needs to start the rest of the season. Needs to start. You need to find out what you have, okay? The offense is not going to get any better because the play calling is atrocious. There's numerous injuries on both sides of the football. You need to start answering questions. Can this kid play? He throws a pretty ball. He has extremely strong arm. But you want to actually see game prep. Allow the guy to game prep and get into a game. Not halfway through it where he's sitting there half the game. And in that time period, too, I think Christian needs to take mental reps and what's going on in the game and being aware what's going on, what's not working, what is working, listen to the play calls. But more importantly, he needs to play. Because at this point, if you're going to say, well, Phil's our best chance to win, at this point, you're not going to win another game because you can't run the football and you can't pass it. I have so many questions around this offense and just the multitude of issues. And again, as I tweeted out, I said Narduzzi and the staff should be fired. And then I said, obviously after that, I said, hey, I'm a Narduzzi guy, thick and thin. I love the guy. I've met him. I think he's a great guy. He's built a great culture here. These kids don't quit. That's great. But there needs to be some type of accountability for this horrendous hire. Okay, and I'll get to the staff here in a little bit because there needs to be changes, clear changes. But when you look at this offense overall, it's just sputtering. There's just no sense of identity. It's not even 50-50 at this point. I mean, the play calling, it's almost like we go under center. It's just a clear, we finally go play action. We throw deep 75 yards, score a touchdown. That's great. We never see that shit anymore the rest of the game. I don't understand the concepts that they're running or understanding what the game plan is. What are you trying to attack? Do you know what the weaknesses are of the defense? What are your strengths? I think if you look at Pitt, if you ask the coaches, what are your strengths? They don't even know. What's crazy to me is, when you saw in the post-game presser, you talked about Narduzzi. Hey, we got to go over what we're good at, what we're bad at. We're not going to do any more, but we're going to continue to do more, simplify things. I think it comes when it comes to simplification, you're pretty simple as it is with play calling. But what's even worse is that your offense is hard to learn because you're running a pro-style system. But more importantly, it's hard to learn, but you're calling plays and your identity of what you're running is simple. It's easy to figure out. You're easy to game plan against. And by no means is it explosive. So the numerous questions that are around them, on top of the minute, just constant penalties. And that's been a theme of this team, going back to week 2. The constant penalties of this team. It's got to stop. Over 10-plus penalties again. You look at this team, and I told people, there is a lot of talent on this team. And I know the fan base, because it's so, fatalistic, well, no, it's average, it's average. Guys, this is the same squad that started against the number 16 team in the country, UCLA. And they won. There's really no difference. So, obviously you still have Bengali Kamara out. You had Devin Danielson out again this game. So 2 more injuries on top of that were still not there. Then you got Matt Gonsalves. Jake Cradle's hurt. Then you looked at the numerous other injuries they have on the back end. There's numerous injuries right now. Obviously Bub Means, he went out of the game. Obviously didn't come back into the game. He's now hurt. So now you have a freshman, Kenny Johnson. He's got to jump in, and you hope that he grows up quick, which is unfair to him. It's just such a shame to see what the team has regressed to based off of, the offense of what it is, which leads into my next point, the defense. There's good and there's bad, okay? The good thing is that the defense, even though for how long it was on the field, okay, which the time of possession was absolutely horrendous. Pitt was barely on the field because it's always 3 and out. It's 3 and out. No one knows what's going on. It's quick rushing here. Let's see if they actually show it here, if I have the stats here. It was absolutely horrible. Let's see here. No, they don't have it. But anyways, the time of possession I know was lopsided because when tallying up the amount of minutes and whatnot, it was absolutely horrendous. But when you look at the defense, one, I still like the way they played. The only thing I really hated, again, penalties, but also missed tackles. That's just inexcusable. I think Braylon Lovelace, the freshman linebacker, how many freshmen have been playing this year for Pitt? He's actually played really well, had a scoop and score, brought it to 28-21 in the third quarter. That was great to see. He made a great play on that. I love how he played. Donovan McMillan, I think, when the guys around him, he's making a tackle. But how many different times did we see on a reverse or on a pitch play, the Virginia Tech offensive player, whether it's a running back or a wide receiver, is 5, 10, 15 yards behind the line of scrimmage. You have them right there, but they missed a tackle. And then when they're wrapping up, the guy still gets 5 yards. So there's got to be more aggression. There has to be more aggression and better tackling. And again, I think the bye week just comes at a great time because this team needs a break. They got to get somewhat healthy, get some guys back. Again, I expect Jake Cradle to be back. Bengali Kamara's got a chance to be back. Devin Danielson, hopefully he's got a chance to be back. Sean Fitzsimmons, he's worked his way back from injury. We got to get him out there more. He was really good in camp. Has shown a lot of promise. A guy I think is going to be really, really good, but you got to get him out there more. But overall, the missed tackles, that's got to stop. The penalties have got to stop. But the offense actually has to produce decent drives. So we don't have the defense on the field the entire game. And honestly, to the extent, I feel bad for the defense because it's trying to hold Pitt in the game the majority of the time, but it's so hard because the offense is barely out there. Numerous times. It's crazy. So again, I think the defense is really not that bad. I think it's actually played really well. It needs to shore up its tackling issues, and taking away the penalties, but that's it. Even with the young guys that they've played and the numerous injuries they've had. It's the offense that's never on the field. So when your defense is on the field, they're going to get tired. So they have to make sure that at least the offense produces some types of drives, which we just haven't seen this year. So I'm not blaming the defense. I think the defense is doing what it's doing. And again, the defensive side of the ball has got a tremendous staff. Those coaches have done their job. I think that they've done a great job up to this point, and they're going to still continue to develop guys. But it's a great group. And there's young guys over there, Archie Collins, Corey Sanders, Ryan Manilak, and then Charlie Partridge, who's a stud, the best defensive line coach in the country, what he's been able to develop and really produce at the defensive line position for Pitt. I think clearly there's no Kalijah Cansey this year and whatnot. We're still waiting for some guys to take that next step. But you saw a great bit of pressure from this defensive line. Dayon Hayes got back there quite a bit. You're loving to see it. He's developing those guys over there. So again, I don't have a problem with the defense. It's just when your offense is so inept, you're asking so much of your defense. It's unfair. So if the defense cleans up its missed tackles, shores up its lanes, especially in the run defense, and takes less penalties, this defense is good. As it was last year and the year before that and the year before that. It is. This leads into my next point. Coaching staff changes. Guys, I can tell you this right now. And again, I joked about, obviously this week about how would it not be funny if, Frank Cignetti was let go, but then, you look at, he goes out, Narduzzi goes out and looks at different candidates for offensive coordinators, and we hire Paul Christ, who really basically runs the same offense as Cignetti. Just joking with the fan base. And obviously some people lost their minds about it, whatever. But the reality is, though, with this staff, there needs to be changes. Okay. One, obviously, Christian Veilleux needs to start going forward, 2 weeks of preparation to get going. Okay. Again, I was already saying that Cignetti is coaching for his next job because he's not coming back. There is absolutely 0% that he's coming back. And I can promise you there is continuous discussions between Pat Narduzzi and Heather Lyke that this is unacceptable. Obviously, I know during the D'Antonio years at Michigan State, mixed in there, during their 15 years or whatever, they were there together. Obviously, Pat Narduzzi was there, obviously not there the whole 15 years when D'Antonio was there. He was there 7 or 8 years. But during those time periods, they had a couple seasons mixed in there. They went 3-9, or they went 4-8. They had a couple spurts, but then they had long spurts of success, which is why Mark D'Antonio is the most successful head coach at Michigan State. But they had those spurts in there. So you look at Pitt this year, if they're able to squeak out another couple wins, they're at 3-9, but they had that at Michigan State, but it's still not good enough here. That's not the floor for us. This team has talent. It's not being utilized. And this coaching staff, their job is to put the players in a position to be successful. They're not putting these guys in a position to be successful. That's a fact. It has been so bad to this point that it's just been ridiculous. So again, the defensive staff I love. They're very close. They're very connected. That group is really, really good. On this offensive side, it's not just Cignetti. These guys are coaching for their jobs too. And there needs to be a hard discussion with Pat Narduzzi at the end of this season that says, look, we need to go into a direction that is not this 1960, 1980 West Coast offense that, Bill Walsh was running, okay? They need to have a serious conversation, which they will, about where's the direction of this program and where is it going? Because there's talent on this team, clearly, but they're not being put in a position to win. So Frank Cignetti, Andre Powell, Dave Borbley, Taekwon Underwood, and I say Taekwon Underwood like a 50-50 at this point because I think he's developing those younger guys and see how they go. But even Tim Salem, you look at the tight end room, Gavin Bartholomew has done his job this year. I think Salem is a guy who's also, can't recruit his own position, which, it is what it is, but he recruits other positions really well. So you leave him off the board. So the rest of the staff on the offensive side, you need to get guys that are hungry in terms of recruiting, but more importantly, in terms of development and coaching. Okay. I've said it numerous of times, Cignetti's coaching for his next job, but these other guys are coaching for their jobs. Because at the end of the season, Heather Lyke needs to have that hardcore conversation with Pat Narduzzi that says, look, are you willing to go to an offense that is actually in this century, okay, actually something that's productive and conducive to the point where it's college football, okay? You can't go to a pro-style offense where it's so hard to learn that you still can't get guys lined up right. How many times is it illegal formation that we see on this team? You cannot have a scheme that is this hard to learn and continually have issues. And it's the days of, you need a couple games, it's not the first game, it's the second game. No, you need to come out firing on the first game. You need to coach your team hard and understand that, you don't sometimes deserve a game or two to warm up. You need to get into it, because guess what? Just like every other team across the country, you're judged at the same forum. You need to win football games. That's why you are here. Graduate student athletes, he's done that. Build a great culture, he's done that. But you consistently need to win. He's done that over the past 2 years. This year is not happening because of the lackadaisical hire of Frank Cignetti. But at the end of the year, again, I was saying fire the whole staff early on during the game. Again, I understand what Pat Narduzzi has built. And if he actually gets a good offensive coordinator and makes very good hires on the offensive side of the football, and it's not just the offensive coordinator, it's the running back coach, an offensive line coach. Then you have an actual team again, like what you saw in 2021, where you put a whole group of guys together. The offense was flourishing, the defense was flourishing, and then automatically you have a team that wins 11 games. But if Heather Lyke sits down with Pat Narduzzi and he says, no, I'm going to do it my way, I still believe in, the 50-50, the scheme of what, Cignetti's running. I'm going to hire a guy that's just like Cignetti, like a Joe Rudolph or Paul Chryst. And he's not going to hire a guy like Joe Moorhead or a Joe Brady, who's currently the quarterback coach of the Buffalo Bills, had major success in college football. How that guy does not have an OC job in college football is mind-blowing. And he's just sitting there. A guy like Scotty Montgomery, who's in the National Football League. I think he's with the Detroit Lions. He's out there. Those guys are innovative. They run very quarterback-friendly offensive systems. They run very up-tempo, very explosive offenses. I mean, especially Moorhead. Hell, everywhere he's been has had explosive offenses. Same thing with Joe Brady. Obviously, his scheme is more college-driven. Wasn't exactly very successful, with the Carolina Panthers, but they obviously lacked a lot of talent. But he's very clearly very successful in turning what was a very average LSU team when Joe Burrow was there to their last season, to where it was one of the best college football teams in America, or ever, to say that least. This team, if you need to have that conversation and he says no, then Pitt really needs to have that conversation and says, look, this isn't who we are, so maybe we need to go in another direction. Because this team is built to win 8-9 games per year on average, and then have those couple spurts where they win 10 wins or 11 wins and compete for the ACC title. Because the way and the resources that Pitt has between Alliance 412, the fans subscribing to Alliance 412, plus the donors, plus the not just Bickle, but everybody else that's involved with that, Pat Gallagher, and there's numerous other donors, have been very successful with Alliance 412. The first year is coming into play with that, and they've certainly struck a deal, because now they're paying every player that's on scholarship on top of the recruiting classes coming in, the great NIL deals. And I know they're great because they've told me how well they're paying right now to the student athletes and their NIL deals that are coming through. Man, if he doesn't understand that, then you got to go in another direction, because with the resources Pitt has, Pitt should be in the top half of what the ACC is, with the resources that Pitt has and the amount of investment Pitt's putting into this. The guy's making between $5.5-6 million per year, and it keeps going up. He's the second highest paid coach in the ACC. Heck, even more than Norvell. And then obviously with his contract coming up, I would think they'd probably sign him to a longer deal, depending upon how the rest of the season goes. And it probably would put Pat Narduzzi number 3, depending upon how much they pay Norvell to stay. But still, Pitt's invested. Pitt has done their job in terms of investing into football, especially with the assistant salary pool. It's very, very good. I can tell you that. They're paying what they're supposed to pay. Very competitive. So the changes need to happen. So if Narduzzi stays, again, I'm good with him staying if the changes are made and a modern day offense is brought to Pitt, like it was in 2021, where we were able to be aggressive. And basically, it almost felt like when we were out there that we were going to score a touchdown every drive. That's kind of how you watched the Pitt game in 2021, where you just knew Pitt was going to score a touchdown every drive, or at least every other drive, or at least get a score at some point where there's a touchdown or field goal on every drive. Because this team has talent. It has the talent. But more importantly, going into the offseason, you need to fill your holes with the portal, figure out your gaps, where you're missing, use the portal to fill those, along with keeping the class together. It's got a great class that's right here. Plenty of great players in this class. The class plus the transfer portal, figure out what your gaps are, what you need to really work on. But more importantly, find out if you have a quarterback on this roster that's really actually a good quarterback, because you can't go into next season with another bad one. So you start Christian Veilleux the rest of the way, figure out who he is and what he is. If he doesn't perform well in the next 2 or 3 games, then you try Nate Yardell. Find out who you have, because eventually, unfortunately, you're going to have to go into the portal again if Christian Veilleux is not your guy. You're going to have to go into the portal again and get a guy, which numerous people have told me that in heart of hearts, Frank Cignetti was the guy that wanted Phil Dracovic. There were other options out there that Pitt could have gone and ended up picking up. So at the end of the day, this staff, there are guys fighting for their jobs. They need to start performing. This is it. The second half of the season, really, I count it as the second half, even though it's 7 games. It's the second half of the season. Your bye weeks now. You have 2 weeks to really push this team and crank out magically 2 or 3 more wins to end this season, okay? And then get ready for next season, because this season's already a wash. And again, and I've said it before, it's why I waited a day to come on here instead of doing a live reaction. There's plenty of talent here, but you need coaches that know how to develop talent, but more importantly, how to use it. Because if you don't know how to develop it and you don't know how to use it, you're never going to be successful. We're watching it in live form. If Pitt's going to have a bad year, have it be this year. But under no circumstance should Pitt be below 7 wins per year, 8 wins per year. 8-4 is the bare minimum. And they've proven that over the last, really, 2-3 years. The talent's there. It's got to put it together. And the offensive staff needs to change. It needs to get younger, and it needs to get more modernized. It's that simple. We'll see what they do, but I would like to see Christian Veilleux start the rest of the way. Truly find out what you have on this team to where you can go into the offseason, hire a new offensive coordinator, potentially hire a new offensive line coach, a running back coach, wide receiver, whatever you need, because it's going to get really aggressive here coming down the hatch here. So figure out what you need and then fill your gaps in the transfer portal along with the class you have incoming. Use it to your advantage. You have plenty of talent that's there. You have gaps that you're clearly missing, but you need to use the portal to be able to fill those gaps and get back on track to what you're supposed to be. The bare minimum 8 wins. Not this stuff that we're seeing where it's just all over the place on offense, then affects the defense and then affects special teams. Get back to being what you were supposed to be and what we all projected to see this team as it left 2022 at the end of the year with a win over number 16 UCLA. You got to get back to that. And there needs to be serious changes. And I can promise you at heart of hearts, Heather Lyke is going to have those conversations. So Pat Narduzzi is well aware of that. This whole staff is aware of that. And I'm very sure going into this bye week, there's plenty of conversations from numerous people to this football team, but more importantly, to this football staff. Again, guys, thank you again for tuning in to another episode with me again. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. We continue to grow. Please subscribe down below, like the video, comment. What did you think I missed? What do you guys think? What did I get right, miss? What do you think else needs corrected? Who do you want to see start in certain positions? The quarterback position. Are there certain coaches or which positions and technically coaching staffs changes would you want to see? Let me know down in the comments below. As always, guys, I'm so appreciative of what you guys do. And as always, in forever, hail to Pitt. Get ready for Louisville in 2 weeks.